So, I mean, you know, Christianity was really the white man's religion. And so our ancestors came over to America with their own sense of spirituality. And so it was really dangerous for black folks to worship alone. And so in the beginning, they would go to the white people's church. And some historians say they went just because it was, you know, it was rest. It was, you know, they got a little reprieve. And they sat in a separate section from the white attenders. And so I think at some point they wanted a little bit more of a role in the worship experience, but it was easy for them to convert to Christianity because when they convert, the white folks was like, they got saved, you know. It was like a highlight, you know, maybe life was an inch better, and so there was some incentive to become a Christian. And so at some point of gathering with the white folks and wanting to have their own kind of like independent worship or have more say so, they formed their own church. And the first black church was the AME church. Remember that, honey?
Yes. Thank you.
So, you know, so the AMEs are the oldest African American church, and then you have the AME Zion, and you know, from there you have more of us. And so really what happened was, because they did not see us as fully human, did not allow us to fully participate, that's where you begin to see agency. And so there's a lot of pride among the AMEs or the AMEZ because they were the first black church, you know, that were able to pull apart and be independent. But again, I say a lot of what I believe is conservative, we got from conservative white denominations. So like the Methodists, the Baptists, I think there's one other group, I forget. You will see a lot of African Americans. A lot of us were Baptists, a lot of us were Methodists, and those were very conservative denominations. And so you had something called the Great Awakening. And that was like a revival, white folks jumping, and you know, and we took this on too. So we took a lot of conservative theology, but then in the early 1900s, the Holy Spirit, there was like a revival of the Holy Spirit, and then you get Azusa, and you get the Black Pentecostals, and you get the Spirit speaking, which was different because it didn't necessarily have to be in the Bible, but sometimes the Holy Spirit would communicate with people. And so you have those different sects. But all of them are very conservative and have turned out to be kind of, while very expressive and empowering, also, you know, very limiting as well.
Being black, you grow up in the church. It is what it is. So yeah, I, as a kid, grew up in the church. Church was everything. It was the center of family, center of the world.
So I absolutely grew up in the church. From the time I can remember, I was in church, and I always sang in the church. So my very first solo was when I was 4, and I sang Jesus Loved Me. And that was kind of the start of my connection with music and the church and being a part of the black church. So it started very, very early.
I was kind of raised or brought up in the church, I guess, for as long as I can remember, like going to church, getting dressed early Sunday morning, like 7 o'clock service, all the way up. We wouldn't leave church until like 7 p.m. So we would be there from like 7 a.m. to 7 p.m. And yeah, like we was just always like brought up in the church.
I always was a part of the church growing up. My grandmother went to church. My mother went to church. My great aunts were deaconess. My godmother is the administrator of the church and the lead soloist. So I've always been involved in the church growing up. However, I believe as an adult, I surpassed the level of spirituality or understanding of what it meant to be a Christian as an adult than that of my mother or my grandparents. I was more involved spiritually. I took it more serious, so to speak. You know, from what I saw growing up, there were Christians who just went to church every Sunday, was a part of the church, and then there were Christians who actually lived what the church said they were supposed to live and how they were supposed to live. So that was my youth into adulthood, me being a part of the church, being a Christian.
For me, I think it was the whole Growing up in the church is because your mom or grandmother tells you you're going to church. You know, you have to go. It's Easter, it's this Sunday, that Sunday, you're going to church. Don't question it, you know, why you're here, or you just go there, you enjoy it, and you be a part of it. I don't care if you're sleepy, don't talk, you know. And then as an adult, I actually started to question and wanted to explore and experience like what my friends were doing in their religions, and you know, hey, can I read up on that or see that? And still as an adult, it was like, what are you doing? Don't question religion or your church. So that's kind of how it went for me.
The kind of a church I attended was more of a traditional Baptist church.
Baptist, traditional.
A Baptist church.
Singing and, you know, the tambourine and dancing. It was a good time, you know. So it was traditional for me.
Yeah, I definitely grew up in a traditionally Baptist church, even to the point of growing up where females weren't allowed in the pulpit, so to speak, as they are allowed in the pulpit today in Baptist churches. But I grew up in a very traditional Baptist environment. However, growing up, as I became an adult, I always claimed I'm non-denominational, because I learned that denominations were based off traditions and rules, not necessarily the Christian or what the Bible says. It's more so the set rules that those group of people chose to go by, how they wanted to run their church.
People praised, people, you know, worshipped, but it was very contained, and it wasn't necessarily what I would consider free, but they did it.
What I loved about the black church for me was the fellowship, the family, a place to go outside of your traditional family members, an extended family, so to speak, people that you can lean on, that will be there for you, someplace where you can go get answers you couldn't necessarily get from, you know, your traditional family members, you know what I mean? So I found it as a safe haven, you know, so to speak, for a place for me to go. Because at a certain point in my life, my family, they weren't going to church anymore. I probably went more than anybody, you know. Being the position that I found myself in as a young person, even as an adult, being the more responsible person, there was a place for me to go and for me to lean on somebody when everybody else was leaning on me, so to speak.
For me, it's always been the music. So because I sing, that's my connection. And so I feel like I'm talking to God. God is talking to me through the music. And the music is like the staple of the black church. So that was always my draw and always my connection, so that I could hear the music, be a part of the music, and have my connection with God.
I honestly feel like I only feel that way or felt that way because it was instilled in me. I don't feel like, had I had the choice to choose whether or not to attend church or not, or whether or not God was the person that I wanted to believe in, or that I felt like I should believe in, that I would feel that way, or I would have felt that way.
I was 15, 16, was when I started realizing, okay, the attraction and the feeling that I have for females, it extends, or it goes beyond just regular friendship. So I was about 16, and at that time, I was still dating boys and you know, kind of exploring, experimenting. But that side of my life I wasn't out or anything. I wasn't even sure what was going on. So I would say, yeah, about 16.
I knew I was different, just from kindergarten on up. I would kiss girls on the playground. That was cool and everything. But maybe around 13 or 14, I realized I might be a lesbian. But I didn't really come to terms with it until I was about 15.
I realized that I was a lesbian very early. I didn't know that it was lesbian. I just knew that I was attracted to the same sex or women. I used to practice in the mirror. I was about maybe 9 or 10. I used to practice in the mirror. What would I say to a girl? I had a male cousin that I grew up with. We're like 6 months apart. And I remember me and him arguing, like telling him, you don't know how to do it. You don't know what to say to her. I'm telling you what to say. I know what to say to her, you know? So I remember that vividly, you know, my Barbies being together, you know, and just growing up, I always had that understanding, you know what I mean? I even would dream of having a different genital. Not that I'm transgender or want to be a man, you know, I'm comfortable being a woman, but I would dream having, you know, a penis and wake up like, oh, it was just a dream, you know, wake up and look and it was just a dream. So very early on, I knew that I was different and that I was attracted to women.
I knew that I was a lesbian or into girls or into women. I was really young also. I was like 2nd or 3rd grade, you know. I had a crush on a few girls in the classroom. We would play house, you know, and things like that. And then just growing up, it's just kind of like with the mother I had, you know, she cared more about like her image or how it would make her look, or she did something wrong as a parent, you know, so she would make me feel really bad about it. Like she would say little comments to me, I haven't seen you with the boy yet, and things like that, you know. And then once I realized how much taboo it was, like, you know, in the black community, in church, and things like that, in a crazy way, I think it kind of made me be like, you know what, forget it, I am. You know, like, I like that feeling of being like a rebel, I guess, you know. Yeah, but I realized early on that I liked women and that I wanted to be with a girl. I wanted to marry a girl.
This, for me, I know people have various journeys to how they got to be in the LGBT community. Mine really just was like, bam. There was a friend who we just, I guess, through spending time with each other, I just realized that I was attracted to her, and yeah, we kind of went from there. So I don't know, it's not like I don't have the story of, no, I know I was born this way. That's not my journey. But I do know that I am attracted to women, so.
I was in college, and mind you, so I started singing in the church at 4, and that was prevalent all the way up through this time. So at this point, I'm singing in our college gospel choir. I think I was the president or something like that. I was high up there. And then all of a sudden, I was just kind of like hit with these feelings and these thoughts, and it was a lot of confusion. And I didn't know what to do. Like, I just remember being in turmoil, like, okay, I'm leading this gospel choir. I know what it's like. I know, you know, how my mother feels. I know how the church feels. And so I didn't know what to do when I decided that I was absolutely a lesbian and there was no question about it, my choice was to lead a double life.
What made it easy for me to be with a woman, so to speak, I don't know anything else. I've never been with a man. I've always been attracted to women. You know, I mean, you do what you're supposed to do. You know, I've had a boyfriend, but I've never really been attracted, you know, to males that way. You know, I could say, you know, oh, that's a handsome young man. He's a nice looking guy, but for me, I've always been attracted to females. You know what I mean? And I think it was because I don't know. I think there's something soft about a woman. I don't know, something sweet about her. You know, it just seems to me like, you know, that this was what was perfect for me. Nothing against men, you know. I have 3 brothers. I have a 15-year-old son. You know, I love men. I feel like we need men. You know what I mean? Nothing against them, but this is just my preference. You know.
The comfortability, it just felt right. There was never a feeling. There were times that I was dating guys that, I mean, I loved guys. I, you know, was attracted to men. Still am attracted to men, but it's not in that way. So it was the way that I this security that I felt, this safeness and being me, all of me, and allowing myself to just be free. So my ability to do that made me be like, this person, I felt like totally comfortable being all of who I am with this person. So it was then that I knew, like, wow, this is really how you're supposed to feel. So I think it took a while for me to be okay with that, though. Yeah, but definitely the comfort and the security that I felt from being with a woman kind of helped me to really identify, oh, this is where I need to be. This is what I'm supposed to be doing. This is what a relationship feels like. This is what love is.
Men gross me out like no other. I love guys. We hold it down, but I can never ever picture sleeping with a guy. And it's like, man, woman, like, it's God's gift to earth. Like, just that connection. There's a bond. Like, a girl gets you. When it's that time of the month, she knows to leave you alone. When you wake up looking a mess, she get it.
What was it about women that had me?
You gonna look at me?
Just as a reminder. No, you know what? I think it was definitely the softness, you know, the femininity.
Yeah.
The understanding, like, hey, I can talk to her, but I can still kiss her, still like her. Or she understands exactly where I'm coming from because she feels it too. You know, things like that. I have dated men. I've been with men in my life. And it just wasn't the same for me. It just did not feel, I don't know if I want to use the word natural, but yeah, I'm using natural. It just didn't, you know, seem, it just didn't feel natural to me. And I've always, every time, you know, if I was with the guy, I was always the guy's girl. I was always the friend, the home girl. Let's play video games, or let's just hang out, let's just chill. Then it would get really awkward when it went any further than that. It's like, no, you know, but it was always easy for me with women. It was easy for me to approach a woman, or easy for me to, you know, get close to a woman and just establish that bond. Yeah, it was just naturally intimate, you know, so.
Some sins are greater than the other. I do believe that there's some demons are way worse than other spirits. I mean, we know that there's different rankings and categories and families of different, you know, spirits and stuff. I think homosexuality is the most disgusting thing in the world. I sincerely do. I think any spirit of perversion, I don't care if it's like, if you're participating in orgies, or if you have a homosexual lifestyle, if you're in fornication or adultery, God hates that stuff. You know, God doesn't call everything an abomination, but some things, you know, God specifically said that homosexuality is an abomination. So there are some sins that are greater than the other, and they're just disgusting and just vile. I mean, I liken homosexuality to adultery. I think it's equal. I mean, maybe not in this generation, because you see so many people remarried and they just think nothing's wrong with it. Like, people just divorce and remarry like clockwork, like it's nothing. But in God's eyes, it is abominable and it's disgusting. It's equivalent to homosexuality. So I also liken homosexuality to a pedophile, you know. But because people's minds are warped today, they think it's okay for you to be gay. Everybody should accept all the gays and their gay lifestyle and stuff like this. But when it comes to pedophile, that's nasty. I mean, well, it's nasty for you to be pumping guys in the butt and you scissoring another female, but you think it's wrong for an older man or an older woman to be feeling on a child, but it's okay for you to have sex with the same sex. No.
So what were you taught, or what was preached at your church in regards to being a lesbian?
Oh boy.
Oh boy. You're going to
It's
hell.
an abomination.
It's an abomination.
You're going to burn in hell.
Adam and Eve, not Adam and Steve.
Yeah.
Well, that's for men, I guess, but the same thing.
It was bad. It was a sin. It was nasty. It was gross.
Pretty much that you were going to hell. I mean, like, I know that there aren't necessarily hierarchies of sin, but it surely came across like, you know, in terms of hierarchy, if there was one, that lesbianism would be like top of the line.
I have an aunt who's a lesbian, and I think that's when I noticed they treated her terrible. And her father, my grandpa, built the church, and it kills me to know that you are so tied to church for so long. You have roots into this church, and they still hate you. And this isn't just like random people. This is family. You can't preach hate at the service, and they also preach love.
As an adult, when I got back into the church as an adult, I don't know, your typical, it's a sin, and you're going to hell, it's an abomination. But I think the messages, the one thing that I found interesting about the messages was that whenever they would come across the pulpit, that particular sin was preached about and taught about with a different tone to it. And I actually had talked to my pastor about that when I first left the church again. That when he would talk about adulterers or talk about liars or backbiters and all those people, it's a different tone. But when he would preach about homosexuality and related to maybe something that was going into the media, there was this disdain, this passion that he had that just felt hateful. So, and that trickles down. So in the church, my experience was, it's a negative thing. It's like something people don't want to be associated with. Not really, So, and that, it was, they didn't say it was a bigger sin or the worst sin, but definitely it came across as though it was.
My perception of it, I got that being homosexual was the worst sin ever. Like, they made it seem like you could kill someone and be forgiven, but you can't be gay because that's just it. Like, you going to hell, but you could kill somebody and God's going to forgive you. And like, I was pretty much taught like it's an abomination. And I remember somebody told me like, I think it was my mom actually, that I was gonna bust hell right open or something like that. It was something like that. And I mean, obviously it didn't shake me because but yeah, like that's what I was taught. Like it was an abomination. Like it was definitely frowned upon. Like, and if you were, like, you weren't supposed to tell people. It was supposed to be kept a secret. Like, whatever.
I had a pastor, and I had a pastor at a church that I attended, and he preached. He preached up something serious from out of Romans 1, about how homosexuality was just the worst thing on earth, you know? And it actually pierced me to a point where I can't do this anymore, you know? And there's a time in my life where I was gay, but I wasn't practicing my authenticity. You know what I mean? I really was. I even tried to date a man during that time, a 3-year span, where I was like, I'm not gay no more. You know, I would be attracted to women, but I just denounced it. That's not what I'm into anymore. I still had gay friends.
Yeah.
I still went to, you know, certain events where all my gay friends were at and everything, but I just didn't, you know, involve myself or didn't practice it. You know what I mean? And he preached it in a way that didn't necessarily, it wasn't with love. You know, it was almost, it scared the hell out of me.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like, you gonna go to hell, and you gonna go to the part of hell that's the worst part of hell because you're homosexual. You know what I mean? And I really just wanted to do what was right. That's it.
I remember when you were going through that, we were friends, and I was a little more into her, you know. And when she told me this, I was just like, what, are you serious? I'm like, we could have a non-physical relationship, like we could still.
She really thought we was gonna be able to be together,
like, you know,
and just be together.
I was like, we could just, you know, be intimate in each other's minds, or we could just, you know, like build that kind of, like, I was so trying anything. Like, you cannot be telling me you feel like this because at church they, you know, and it was real. Like, she was actually like on that for a long time, you know. We had actually lost contact and stuff because of it, you know. Yeah. Wow.
What was going on in your mind, or how were you feeling emotionally when you would hear that stuff?
Anxiety. Not based off of what they were saying, but just anxiety of if my secret ever came out. Having to personally bear that, I felt like was really scary. So it was more anxiety around how can I make sure that this stays a secret? How can I make sure that nobody finds out? And if people know, that they're trusted people who won't, you know, share my story or put it out there. So I would say it was mostly anxiety. I never really felt anything in terms of God doesn't love me, or that I was going to hell. I never really had those thoughts. It was all centered around people, and what people would think of me.
When I would hear these sermons of gay is bad, gay is wrong, gay, you're going to hell, my whole thought is, after a while, fuck it. I'm going to hell, I'm going to party, I'm going to drink. I ain't going to have no sex yet, but I'm going to smoke, I'm going to do what I want. God don't love me, I don't love him. Fuck it. And that's how I really lived for a long time. God don't care about me.
In the beginning, when I had first came back to church, I was like early 20s. And even when I would visit churches, you know, during my later, I guess, teenage years, I would get really angry hearing those, you know, the rhetoric that's coming from the pulpit about homosexuality, and I mean all kinds of things. I've heard preachers say that we were the reason for or the cause for AIDS, and just all of this nonsense. I get angry, but and I would leave and I would feel like I had been ran over by a truck. Like I would feel depleted and just felt beat down, like, oh my God, you know. But then as I grew and as I got better with myself and more comfortable with myself, I pretty much, it kind of just happened. I really didn't have, you know, this potion on what I did to be able to deal with it. It just kind of happened where over time, it didn't bother me as much. It would bother me on different levels. It wouldn't bother my soul. because I knew my soul was I was okay. It would bother me because I would worry about people who weren't in the place that I was in, what this must be doing to them, especially a lot of the youth, like hearing that. Like, so then I would look at it from a different level, like it bothered me in that sense. Or if you are talking about public health stuff and you are miseducating folks and mixing that with hate, that it started to bother me on those levels, but not necessarily individually, personally it didn't cause any conflict, you know. But it just kind of happened over time, where I had to, I guess, just kind of start letting some of the stuff just slide off and back. I don't really know, just over time, but it was a process of me feeling scorned and even thinking sometimes like, I don't want to go back there.
Sitting in church and listening to these sermons gave me anxiety like I've never felt in my life. You know, like I said, it was very painful, you know, thinking about everybody's looking at me when the preacher starts to preach these sermons, you know. Depression, you know, like, what am I going to do? How am I really supposed to live? You know, operating, you know, or living in such a way that's a direct contradiction of who I say I am as a Christian. You know, it's like they were complete opposites. They don't attract. You had to choose. The fact that I was in a situation and an environment that told me I had to choose something that I had no choice of anyway was insanity to me. It was painful. It hurt. Thinking about it now hurts. You know, it's like somebody telling you, you get an arm and a leg, and you born with them, but you can't have both of them. Well, I need both of them. You know, what you mean? You gotta have to do it one way with one of them. You're gonna have to go without them. That's not fair. It's unfair, especially when you're in this black church environment and you know what Susie doing with Billy.
Right.
You know? But because y'all see me coming in with my baggy clothes and my gym shoes and my Timberlands, and I'm openly gay. I wear mine. Mine is not hidden. You know? What y'all say is a sin and y'all giving me dirty looks. And I know you sleeping with the deacon and he married. And I know that deacon was drunk yesterday because he's my godfather. You feel what I'm saying? That's not fair. And it's unfair that people put people in those situations mentally, you know?
Wow. I don't even think I could. Well, how I felt during those, you know, those services and sermons and things like that, it was more internal because I fly under the radar, you know. I'm not like, whereas T is more like, hey, this is me, it's who I am, you know. She's more
masculine.
More masculine, you know. And so it's like someone just looks at her and peg her. And of course in church, you know, with the stares and they're like burning a hole in your chest staring at you, whereas me, I'm kind of like, I don't know, am I faking it? Am I like, oh, well, I know they're talking about me, but everyone's not looking at me like that because they don't know if I am or not, you know. But it definitely hurt, and it definitely made me do some digging and some thinking, like, wow, like, do I belong here? Like, this is how they feel about who I am. Like, what am I doing here then, you know? So that was just...
It was like when sometimes you hear the preacher say, if your sin can flash across over the top of your head, you know how they say, you know, we all know your... I didn't feel anything when the preacher said that because you looking at me. You don't need to see no flash and my seeing in lights, you know. I didn't feel. I always felt that. You know, some people feel uncomfortable, like, oh Lord, if they could see what I did last night, you know. That wasn't uncomfortable for me, you know, because that was every day walking in the church. every day. You know, ushers, greeters, you know, even the collection plate sometimes. I'm a thief because I'm lesbian now? I mean, y'all killing me. You know?
So a little history, I did not necessarily grow up in a church where sexuality was not talked about at all. So it wasn't even something like gay bashing like how you hear from some pulpits now. I didn't experience that. So that kind of internal battle that people have, it was just nowhere on my radar. It never crossed my mind. The biggest concern that I had was, how was I going to be able to serve still being a pastor and or associate minister and be in a same gender relationship? That was my biggest concern. I didn't have any internal battles as far as, well, what does God think and this is wrong, and that just again was not my testimony. And I think if I remember correctly, even the conversations that I had with my parents, most of them were around this, we just want you to still be able to fully live out your call and still be involved in your vocation. And I'm sure they had some fears that I wouldn't be able to do that. I definitely had some concerns that I wasn't going to be able to do that. So if I had a battle at all, the battle was around, do I turn in my collar and just not preach, or do I live out this life and figure out a way to do both? And so graciously, God has allowed me to do both, and I'm grateful for that.
For me, I came to my identity after I had already answered the call. I wasn't at that time sure what my call was specifically in ministry was. I knew I was called into ministry. I was in seminary already, discerning what was next for me in terms of if I would pastor or do something different. But no, I had no internal battles, which I think I feel very grateful for. I often feel like I have a sort of coming out privilege because I didn't come with a bunch of baggage in the sense of I hadn't been raised in some particular denominational tradition. I came to religion as an adult, or spirituality as an adult. I was in a progressive denomination. I was in a progressive seminary. I had other people around me who were out, who looked like me and who were doing ministry. So I won't say it made it easier, but I didn't have a lot of the sort of baggage that would weigh me down from saying, oh, I can't be a minister and also be a queer woman. Like, that has never been in my thought process at all. So
I think that I am too feeling blessed that I grew up in a Baptist church, but we just didn't talk about sexuality at all. So there wasn't a vehement kind of homophobic message that I heard. But I didn't hear anything affirming either. So I got the impression that you weren't allowed to be a sexual being at all. One of the things I laugh and joke about with my brother, who also grew up in the church with me, is that there were married couples we never knew were married until we were adult and really able to figure out and put two and two together and see the people getting into the cars at the same time. I mean, things we wouldn't have interpreted as children. So there was no framework for being a person in a relationship who has sex in that relationship. That was never discussed in church. So I say I feel blessed because of that, because I didn't have shame. There was no shaming because there was no sexuality to begin with. I think that once I got to college and started to hang out with other people who identified as Christians who were my age, I was introduced to a more conservative line of thinking. I remember the Christian, they weren't a fraternity, but they were like this social group that met every week, they had Bible study and all this. And they were really conservative. I mean, and I experienced the impact of the patriarchy and the sexism more than I experienced homophobia. So they were like, women can't do nothing, and I was just like, what? I think that more recently, since I have now graduated from seminary and I'm now preaching and teaching in places, I get these back channel conversations from people I grew up with who are saying to me, well, how do you read the Bible? So again, it's not a blatant you going to hell, but it's how are you reconciling this? Because this is not, what Bible are you preaching and teaching? And So I have always felt the pressure to be able to answer those questions. Like, can I fully explain how I interpret XYZ scripture that you're trying to throw at me? And that's considerably less painful. That's a more intellectual matter, trying to argue for a scripture rather than feeling like somebody's attacking my personhood. I do have very close friends who experienced just horrible and terrifying church life. And it took them years to be cleansed of the shame they experienced in church settings. But I too didn't experience that directly. I'm grateful for that.
By an openly gay bishop went on as scheduled at the American Baptist College in Nashville tonight, despite controversy surrounding her visit and criticism from other pastors. News Channel 5 was the only station at the event, and our Jason Lamb has the story all new at 10 tonight. Jason?
That's right, Shannon. Bishop Yvette Flunder was flown in from California for tonight's lecture. Some Metro police officers were also on hand to make sure there were no disruptions. Bishop Flunder met with the president of American Baptist College before her lecture tonight. Flunder is openly gay and has been married to her wife for 30 years. That's something that a group from the National Baptist Fellowship of Concerned Pastors says goes against the Bible. But today, the American Baptist College president said denying Flunder a chance to speak is discrimination, pure and simple.
I was serving at the church. There were a lot of people at the church who knew that we were dating, but it was not ever something that like the pastor would say, oh, and we welcome Dawn and her partner. Like, no, they didn't roll like that. As a matter of fact, at one point, the pastor actually asked for us to not ride in the same car together coming to church. And so for a while, we would come in, we rode, because on the weekends we stayed with each other, and we would come to church and park down the street, and like one of us would get out the car and just like walk the few blocks to the church. And then yeah, so it was craziness at the time. You know how like when you look back at stuff, and I'm like, I don't know what I was thinking, because when I think about who I am and my values, inauthenticity is not one of them. Authenticity is definitely a value of mine, and I just feel like that period of my life wasn't lived in the best light, or the light that I would have preferred it to be. Things have changed.
I don't believe I've experienced any discrimination based on my sexuality. I always struggle when we have these conversations about the black church. Because I believe that the black church is loving, caring, supportive, affirming. And so I struggle when I hear persons from the LGBT community talk about isms that they experience. My colleagues who are gay or lesbian, who have had struggles with the black church, to me, I've carried the belief that usually their struggles have not come because of their sexuality. Their struggles have come because of their ways in which they want to push their sexuality in people's face in the church. And so I struggle with this notion that the black church is somewhat homophobic, because I don't believe that. Everybody knows that the minister of music is gay, right? Everybody knows that this sister has been coming to the church with this woman for the last 10 years. I mean, we all know that, and so I'm always concerned with how we label the black church as being this somehow homophobic institution compared to our white churches, or compared to our other churches of various other cultures and traditions. I think the challenge with many people in the LGBT community is it's this in your face type of behaviors, and that sometimes may cause a reaction from church members. But that doesn't mean that the church hadn't been loving and supportive and open.
But now this is where we do have some struggles. But I mean, this doesn't have to do with us per se. I mean, just because they know that the musician is gay does not mean they're not homophobic. I think that Danielle, and I think myself included, we walk a tightrope kind of in the church. So when we say not in your face, I think the church is homophobic. I think even in your context, people will say, we know, but don't do this, but don't say this. You know, so I think that while it is great that we can do ministry, we haven't been ousted or, you know, whatever, I still think there's a lot of homophobia. And so I think, you know, I think Danielle's in denial. Greatly in denial. And so what she's saying is that if you're not, you know, a male wearing red with, you know, Tootsie on, or a female that dresses more masculine, that's what she means. And I'm like, you still should have the liberty to dress any kind of way. You know, so Danielle, you know, I'm not trying to out you, used to dress more masculine because she's a professional. She's assimilated. You know, but I think, you know, we have a friend, and he was a pastor, and he never came out, and he was able to pastor. And the moment he came out, they out him. And they said, we knew this all along. So I think, you know, lesbian, gay, or whatever, you know, the fact that people know it, but they don't know, but you can never talk about it. You know, I think it is conflictual. Okay. I think, you know, Danielle has discussed, you know, I don't know once we get married if they're going to keep me as pastor. Well, if they're so loving and embracing, then why do you worry about it? So, you know, I kind of think Danielle's in denial. I think me and her are, you know, when she says, you know, well, we're not the hard to accept. You know, we have some feminine taste, or, you know, feminine acceptable kind of thing. So I think that we're not in your face, but I think the person that chooses to express their sexuality in that way should not be discriminated against. And so we, you know, I feel like they should be able to live their life fully as they are. And just because we're not walking around, you know, dressed maybe atypical, what stereotypically, I don't know if all that makes sense, you know, feminine or masculine, you know, but I do think there's homophobia in the black church.
Lydia is from this town called Thyatira. Have you ever heard of this place before? No problem, I'm going to tell you. Thyatira is a place of extreme poverty. Thyatira was a place where people suffered from much economic hardship. Thyatira was a place where corrupt political officials ruled the land. Thyatira was a place where social services for seniors were cut. Thyatira was a place that held a huge prison incarceration rate. Thyatira was a place where young people struggled with unemployment. Thyatira was a place where you would be judged by the color of your skin and not the content of your character. Thyatira was a place that would judge sisters on whether they had long hair or short hair, dreadlocks or pressed hair. Thyatira was a place that judged people who happened to be differently abled. Thyatira was a place that judged gentlemen if they happened to be a little feminine, and judged ladies if they happened to be a little masculine. Thyatira was a...
So when I first told my praise team leader, I didn't necessarily feel any discrimination. Nobody treated me any differently. She didn't tell anybody. It was kind of like our secret. But where it switched and I really started to feel discrimination was when I met now she's my ex-wife, but when I met the woman that I was going to marry. So then it became, well, do I deny her? Like, I felt like I couldn't do that. Not to mention that there was a lot of pressure that I felt when I started wearing a ring. So people were, you know, hounding me to like confirm it. There were rumors all around the church, and people were hounding me to confirm it, and I felt like I had just reached this breaking point where I couldn't handle that pressure anymore. So at that point, I went back to the praise team leader. I said, you know, all the rumors are true. Yes, I am engaged to marry a woman in the church. Still want to sing and, you know, give my all to God and do what I'm called to do. And at the time, she kind of acted like she received me, like, you know, I understand, thank you for sharing, whatever. But then 3 weeks later, I received a text message saying that my services were no longer needed. So that's where I began to feel like there was discrimination, particularly because I knew a lot of people's dirt. You know, I'm on the praise team. I had access to a lot. And so some of the leaders that made that decision, I felt like, how dare you? When you're doing X, Y, and Z, how dare you single out what I'm doing and say that I'm not worthy enough to sing on this team, but you can get up here and sing. So that's when I really started to feel the discrimination, and that's ultimately what made me leave.
So basically, once I got engaged to a woman, and it became known, and the woman attended the church as well, you know, they pretty much asked my fiance at the time to step down from her position in her ministry, and as a result, she left the church. She could no longer sit under the pastor, and she was broken. And in turn, she felt like I should have left and I should leave the church as well. I wasn't at that point. I felt like I disagreed with what they did. I wasn't shocked because that's kind of what they do. I was shocked how it was done. I was disappointed. I was mad and I was hurt because of who it was done to. But I still felt okay to go. However, me going told my fiance, in her mind, she received it as I wasn't supporting her. I was supporting them. I wasn't there for her. And it started to create major problems in our relationship. So as a result, I made the decision to no longer go because I wanted to focus on my home. I wanted to build my relationship. I wanted her to know that I had her back.
I know that you pretty much have the feeling of, even though I am out as a lesbian, I should still be able to serve on different ministries openly. It shouldn't be an issue, dude. Like, why do you feel that way?
So I just feel that way. I just feel like in the church, nobody's perfect, right? That's part of the mantra. Like, we're all broken people, and the church is the hospital, etc., etc. So even if you perceive my lifestyle to be part of that brokenness, why is it that my individual lifestyle is not enough to serve? And so my issue, I'll call it issue, with your stance is, even though you may disagree with that you take actions to kind of perpetuate it. So you intentionally stepped down from your leadership when you were deciding to come out because you knew how they were. Mm-hmm. And my stance is, in you doing that, you perpetuate that that's okay, and it's not okay. So make room for everybody, right? Like, if you can get up there, especially given all the sin that you do publicly, right? you can get up there and preach every day. If your worship leader can get up there and sing after having sex with all these women, why is it that I can't? And I feel like it's a double standard.
Right. I don't necessarily feel like you shouldn't be and they should be. I feel like I stepped down because I knew the rule and how that church functioned. I don't think so. I did that to protect myself.
But you also told me that I should have known to do that as well.
No, what I meant was, it's like, you know the type of church that you attend, and if you did not want to possibly be sat down, you probably should have just kind of backed out, because it was a pretty good chance you were going to. That's what I meant. Like, not that it's okay, but that hey, this is the rules. This is how this church functions. So this is how that church functions. That's how they do. So I'm gonna do what's necessary to protect myself and protect whatever and how I feel most comfortable. You know. So hold on. So it's not that I necessarily agree with it, because yes, there is a hypocrisy. You know, definitely there's a hypocrisy. And then who's to say? Like, how do you? If you get into doing things like, you know, sitting people down, you know, you gotta like factor in too much, and who's to say? Everything is subjective.
What you mean factor in too much?
Like, you gotta factor. Like, if you're saying that I'm saying that no, it's not okay, right?
I'm saying what?
You're saying that I'm saying that it's okay that people are sat down, if you will.
I'm not saying that you're saying it's okay. I'm saying that because you are acting according to this standard that's bullshit, practically, that you're perpetuating the fact that it's okay. Not that you necessarily agree that it is, but your actions keep that going. So you have power because you know how it operates, but you don't have the power to operate in the calling that you have, to lead youth and to be able to make a difference in their life and to be an example to them. You take that power away, but you have power to do what?
It was power in that particular situation.
How so though? Because you still couldn't do what you were called to do, or still couldn't do what you wanted to do, or what you felt led to do. So what power did you really have?
This may hurt, but I didn't have to experience what you experienced. That was where my power was. Nobody was gonna sit me down, or what did you feel? You felt betrayed. You were traumatized. So the power was saying, I already know how y'all gonna do, so let me do this over here. So I chose that. So to me, that was powerful.
Okay.
I mean, for what we were given, for the situation we were in, and to me, that I can't help any youth if I'm torn down and beaten down. So I wasn't gonna allow them to do that.
You're not helping youth in any way, and so I feel like the only difference is that you and your actions.
How can you say that I'm not?
Inadvertently, I'm still talking though.
All right.
You, through your actions, inadvertently said that it was okay to do that. Me, through my actions, yes, I bore the brunt of a lot of pain and brokenness and all that other stuff, but I definitely didn't bow out gracefully.
You left the church.
But my presence was known, that situation was known. And so I don't feel like I just was like, okay, I didn't cower out.
For you needed to leave. And that was you taking a stance. So I didn't feel like I had a stance to take, really. I'm just trying to be still in alignment. I had not been.
Like you didn't have a stance to take. The reason that I was sat down was because we were getting married. So how do you not have?
That's not my. I didn't have an issue.
That wasn't your. That was just me.
I'm saying I didn't have an issue with it. What stance was I gonna take? What was the stance?
The same stance that I just said. Like, I'm not going to succumb to this hypocritical standard that you're setting. And if you can't accept me and my wife, this person that I'm about to spend the rest of my life with, why would I sit under your stewardship when God is not just in these four walls? I can go somewhere else and still get fed and still get what I need and not sit under this hypocrisy.
But you didn't.
You didn't.
No, I'm saying you didn't.
My argument was never not to go to church, Linda.
But did you go?
It wasn't about me. My argument to you is, what I said to you was that... It depends on
what you want your end result to be. And if you want your end result to be still in a relationship with God, still being okay, then that's where I was at that point. Like, I'm still all right. Like I feel like I can still get a word. This is still helping me. Now, yes, and this one what you done just did right here. And I'm gonna tell you about it. When you said your stance was no, it ain't because you spoke up. I was your voice. I talked to the pastor. I talked to the leaders. So don't act like you stood up. No. So I don't act like I didn't also feel like this was messed up.
I wouldn't change anything in the grand scheme of things, but I do feel like I could have responded differently, or I could have done something differently and maybe saved, that's a stretch, but maybe change the course of what happened to some degree. Ultimately, things happen for a reason. I'm great now, and I know you're great now, but while we were in the marriage, I asked myself that a lot, and I wondered if I should have just kept my mouth shut, or maybe not worn my ring, or whatever the case may be. And there would have been personal implications to that, but I feel like it would have changed the course of where our relationship went, or where our marriage went.
So it's stuff that I gotta kind of, I guess, deal with also, that I have not allowed myself to be vulnerable, be back involved. And it might be still shame and guilt that I feel toward God. Like, how am I going to put somebody else before you? So, yeah. So I think that gets in the way of me totally being involved, being engaged, because I feel like I did the ultimate. I did what you're not supposed to do, and then the end result was still this. But then at the same time, it still wasn't enough for her either. So it's kind of like dealing with, I think, all of that is just kept me kind of in a safe zone, and kept me kind of not as engulfed in religion and spirituality as I once was.
My understanding of deliverance is that the taste would be taken out of your mouth, so to speak. That you would have, no feelings or no urgings of this particular thing that you're being delivered from. And as a lesbian, this is what, I was told indirectly, that I just needed to be delivered from lesbianism and homosexuality.
I think sexual perversion is one of the worst sins that you could ever yoke yourself to. I would get deliverance from homosexuality immediately. If you have to fast to drive that thing out, once again, I like to encourage people because it's really not you. I tell people that with everything. I don't care if it's masturbation or homosexuality or drugs. Like, if it's really a spirit, if that's something that you're dealing with, it's not you. The enemy can try to force that condemnation on you to make it seem like it's you, but it's really not you.
Great question. Well, first you have to believe that you have something to be delivered from in terms of your sexuality. I don't think that. I think it's part of the fullness of who I am. So I don't know if that's really the answer to the question, but what do you think about deliverance?
Yeah, to talk about it, using that language just presumes is, a sinful feature or a sinful behavior that needs redemption. This is what makes me so annoyed, because if folks are honest, praying the gay away has never worked.
Right.
It's never worked for anybody. Now, folk choose to be celibate, or folk choose to ignore, whatever. But it doesn't work. It's never worked. I'm actually working on a sermon idea about Paul's prayer, please remove this thorn from my flesh, and trying to kind of hold that prayer up against the prayer to pray the gay away. Like, God's response to Paul was, no, I'm not taking that away from you. And trying to make sense of that, because I really do think that if folk are honest, it never really went away. You just figured out how to be an expert at suppressing it.
Having lived a homosexual lifestyle for many years, since I was a little girl up until the age of 27, I understand that struggle of being a Christian, but also being homosexual and not being able to turn those feelings off. And for many years, I struggled with that. I tried to shove those feelings aside, trying to change myself, but in doing that, it just led to depression, self-hate, suicidal thoughts, a whole slew of things that just pushed me away from God until I just said, God, I want nothing to do with you. But the more we seek God, the more we develop our relationship with Him, the more He begins to tug on us. And He began to tug on me and tell me basically, Jessica, this is not the life that I have for you. I have something so much better for you. And when I finally answered that tug, when I finally said, okay, God, whatever you're trying to tell me, I'm going to listen. Man, He opened my mind. He delivered me from homosexuality. And no, it's not easy. But I tell you, it is worth the while. It is worth it. It is amazing. And I would never change it for the world. So
I've seen stories, and I know of people who say that they have been delivered from lesbianism, homosexual, gay and lesbianism. And however, to me, I believe that this person was never really gay, and that they just made a decision to not be involved in that lifestyle anymore. And that's fine if they want to call it deliverance. That's cool. But for me, I have not experienced it. I feel like that people can be delivered from some things, like crack or alcoholism, you know. But gay and lesbianism, no.
You cannot be delivered.
I don't believe that you can be delivered from that. I believe that's just your truth. That's who you are. You know, if I had my choosing, if it was up to me, and before I came into the world and was born, it's like check one: heterosexual, homosexual. Well, what everybody doing down there? What's the majority? Well, everybody's straight. I ain't even got time for that extra.
Right.
Make me heterosexual. You feel me? That's what I would have went with, because this is not some fly by night easy thing. You got to come out. You got to be delivered. Then you got to come back out because you really wasn't delivered. You know what I mean? So, yeah. And I don't believe in deliverance when it comes to, you know, gays and lesbians.
I guess I have some thoughts around deliverance in general. So that would never be a conversation that I would have. Like, I don't see myself going to God and saying, God, take the taste of alcohol. That's not to say God can't do it. I'm just saying that I would not personally ask God to do that. So it seems a little odd to me to even think of myself saying, God, can you take away this attraction? And I know that that's a very real thing for people. Like, I know people who that has been their struggle. And this I particularly hear from people who said that they've had same-sex attraction since they were little, right? And particularly going through, I could not imagine being a teenager and being attracted to the same sex and having to go through school and those kind of things. Now, that's not to say that I wasn't attracted. I think that I've always been the type of person that could look at another female and say, oh, she looks good, or she has a nice body or something. But it wasn't something that I felt like, ooh, I think I want to try and get with her. That never crossed my mind. I think I just wasn't open at that time to that thought. But I know people for whom that was a real struggle for them growing up, and they literally have prayed to God and say, God, please take my attraction away, gouge my eyes out, kind of thing. And the idea of living like that sounds so sad to me, though real, but very sad.
So what do you think some of the dangers are for a woman or a teenager or a child who has to like go through that and have those prayers to God, gouge my eyes out, take this away? Like, what do you feel like the after effects of like that person just emotionally and psychologically?
Yeah, well, that's what I was gonna say. I think that I won't even say possible, probable, extreme psychological damage when a person has had to experience that. And maybe I'm thinking about this because I am a minister, and through this kind of lens, that also sets up this faulty kind of view of God. Because say a person is asking that of God and giving this prayer and saying, God, please take this attraction away. And that doesn't happen because I believe that for a lot of people is something intrinsic. Like that's who they are. They are attracted to the same sex. And for those people, I'm imagining how that changes their concept of God when God, quote, doesn't deliver them. When they've been saying this prayer for the past 15 years of their lives, and when they look at the same gender, they are still attracted. What does that say about whether or not God answers prayers? And I'm imagining that there's a lot of layers involved with that prayer not being answered, or that prayer being answered, you believe, and then you relapse and are with the same gender. Like all of that, there are so many layers to that. I am like, I feel like I say it so much, but it's because it's true. I am thankful and grateful for the journey that I have had, because in many ways I have felt protected from a lot of the stories that I hear from others in the LGBT community. I have a family that supports me, and though they may not understand, and all of them certainly don't agree, they love me still, and they accept me and my family into our family. Some of the stories of bad relationships, I've had 2 relationships, and other than general relationship things, they weren't full of turmoil. And so when I think about some of the stories of my brothers and my sisters, I'm grateful that has not been my experience, and I'm sad for those who do have those experiences.
So for the people where you said that's pretty much like their core.
Yeah.
Do you feel like it's not, when they say, I'm delivered, I'm no longer attracted, it's not really deliverance, it's more so just behavior modification?
Yes, I believe it's behavior modification. Because and maybe if we were to revisit this conversation years from now, or maybe even if you had asked me years prior to now, maybe I would have said something different. But right now, I just really believe that's who they are at their core. And that even if they go on to never be in a relationship with a woman, or be sexually attracted even to a woman, to another woman, I still believe that that's there, and that's just something that they're choosing to not act on. Whether or not that can be called deliverance, I guess I have no fight in that. I mean, some people may call it deliverance. I don't.
So back to, as far as the seminary, you said that it forces you to look at your perspectives and your dogmas and things of that nature. Do you think that the traditional black church really, they don't really do that because of like slavery? Like you were taught not to question what you were taught. We teach you this, you believe it, and that's it. Like, do you think that black black churches are pretty much resistant to seminary because of that type of history?
That's a great question.
I'm that person who believes that slavery is persistently impacting black community, black folk. I think that what we were taught, and I don't know that this was a slavery teaching, was to not question God. And so questioning the church is by proxy questioning God. And so it's problematic to go to seminary and come out with, a perspective about Jesus in the book of Mark that's somehow not having Jesus be, the perfect. I'm like, no, Jesus was mad and shouldn't have said that to that lady. That's really, I got issue with you, Jesus. And that's blasphemous because God has brought us from a mighty long way. And how dare we, right? And so we have this allegiance to a particular perspective about God that, probably does have root in this is the God who brought us out. But at the same time, reading slave narratives, I understand that obviously they had to revolt against whatever they were being taught in order to justify running away from slavery. I mean, the Bible was used to justify slavery, and at some point somebody had to say, well, wait a minute, first of all, did Jesus say this or did Paul say this? Who said this? And no, we don't agree with that. And so we have these stories from slavery where black people of faith decided that's not the God I want, and this is the God who will deliver me. So it's the both and. There's some legacy that has been passed down of this. We don't question institutions. We don't. But there's also a tradition, a narrative about questioning the teaching. So.
That's scary. I mean, if you've been thinking this way about God, about XYZ your whole life, and then you get to be 30 or whatever, and you go to seminary, I mean, it's traumatic. I think that's another thing that people don't really talk about in terms of seminary. And I don't care where you are on the spectrum, whether you're progressive or think you're progressive or liberal in your thinking, your theological thinking, or you're more conservative. The deconstruction that happens to your theology when you go to seminary, if you allow the process to do what it needs to do or what it should do, is traumatic. It is. And it's not traumatic just for the sake of being traumatic. It's traumatic because I think that, again, as we've said, you're supposed to come out transformed. You go through this process for 3 years, 4 years, you should come out transformed to go out and do the work. And I think that's scary. Like she said, people have left. I mean, I didn't have anybody leave my program because they were mad about seminary, but I certainly had people that would disrupt classes and be, because they were upset. I had a woman in my New Testament class, my first semester of seminary, who would sat in the back row behind us and would just talk back to the professor the entire, telling him that he was of the devil, that he was blasphemous. I mean, this is ridiculous. We're like in an academic setting. I mean, this is not, but she was angry, and she did not come from a church. Her pastor was a learned person, had been to seminary, had various degrees. And so my question at that point is, were you prepared for what you came here for? Did you know what seminary was going to be? Did you know that you were going to be deconstructing the text in ways that were going to feel foreign to you, that were going to feel, uncomfortable for you? So I experienced that kind of stuff where we would be in class and people would be like basically trying to exercise or speak in tongues against whatever they felt like, seriously, of the professor. So it's traumatic in that kind of way for that person.
I mean, a couple things have come to mind since you asked the question. One, that trauma, if you decide to go back to Grandma Nim's church and start to say, raise your hand, Bob said whatever, you also understand yourself to be alienating yourself from the folk who have carried you, the folk who have raised you. I mean, I felt not a disconnect, not torn about whether or not I was going to believe this stuff and how I was able to reconcile that in my heart and in my head. But I felt torn because I was like, well, how do I have a conversation at Thanksgiving? Or how do I go to church with my family and not sit there and walk out on a sermon that is just bull, right? And I think for black folk in particular, I mean, my mama taught me, don't forget where you came from, right? And so there's this sense that you're being disloyal to those who have birthed you, those who've carried you, those who sent you care packages when you was in college, those who, right? And you don't want to do that. And so you go along to get along with your family. I also think that there is, probably rooted in slavery, this desire for Black folk to assimilate and be finally human in the society, right? And so to be contrary is an identity crisis that Black folk have to negotiate. Will I be like everybody else, or will I preach and teach the thing that makes sense in my environment? Will I stand out as the only Black person here who fill in the blank? Or will I do what I need to do to assimilate because for so long we could not X, Y, Z? So, and I do think that that is rooted in slavery, the kind of shame we feel about not being able to fit ourselves into these spaces. So, I think that everything is rooted in slavery. The trauma of that is generational, and I think that we've adopted some of the, frankly, I think, attributes of white supremacy because we're trying to negotiate citizenship in this white supremacist country, and so because it's not. I think to have a progressive Black Christianity runs contrary to white supremacist ideas about Black faith. And so, again, to subvert that puts you as an outlier. I'll give you an example. So there's one of my mentors and friends pastors a church in Philly. It is the only predominantly Black, to my knowledge, open and affirming, and truly not this, open and affirming church in the city. The pastor is a straight identified Black man. And he talks to me all the time about how he doesn't get invited, or he doesn't get to sit at the, adult table, the way he says it, because of his particular way of orienting himself on the spectrum of Christianity. And so not only is he alienated among his Black fellow ministers and churches, but that also puts him at odds with the white faith establishment, because they're like, we don't know what to do with you. You're subverting everything we thought Black church was, whatever. And that's a lonely, isolating place for him. And he has to every day commit to that because this is what he believes is right, and just. So I said all that to say, I think it's a risky business to actually believe that God loves everybody and made everybody in the image of God, and actually that's risky in this environment.
So to your first question about sort of what advice might I have for a Black lesbian who is struggling to kind of reconcile her identity with her call into ministry, I would say for me, though I never struggled in that same way in terms of reconciling my call with who I am or what my sexual identity was, I think it was helpful for me to feel courage or free, because I had some examples of lesbian or queer identified Black women who were in ministry who had been okay, who had done it well, who were well respected, who had learned to live this life of I'm out and I'm proud. And not saying that it was always easy for them, but it made me feel like that I wasn't alone. And I know that that's not an easy thing. I certainly know that being in the seminary space that I was in afforded me that opportunity. The first out queer Black lesbian woman that I met was our dean of students at my seminary, my first year of seminary. And I was like, what is queer mean? Like, I didn't even know, the language at that point. And she came out to all of us, this class of 100 students or whatever it was, day one during orientation. And so over time, as I got to know her and got to know her story and just watched her example, and as I came to terms with what my own identity was, I had someone that I could look to that showed me that I was not alone, even if at that time it was just one other person. And I know that I know that that's not everybody's story. I know that, again, I know because I was in this seminary environment, and I've been exposed to a lot of that, of women who self-identify as queer and who are also in ministry. And so a woman who is just kind of finding her way may not have that same opportunity, but just by virtue of us doing this project, there's 2 of us here who are saying we are here, we exist, and we certainly are not the spokespeople or have the monopoly on the experience, but we are open to the conversation. I think, at least I can speak for myself, that whatever wisdom that I can offer, I'm always open to people reaching out, other women who are trying to find their way, and I can offer whatever my sort of wobbliness of finding my way has been in this world, in this vocation. So I think that that's the initial advice that I would give anyway, is that you aren't alone, and maybe you don't know anybody, but you're watching this documentary now, and at least now you can say there's 2 people that exist, and in the world of social media, that's just a message away. So
yeah, I am lately very anti-institution, and I've been given the fact that I'm trying to be ordained into the institution. So the struggle is real. And so I say to people, you do not have to be a member of any institution. And just that freedom. There was no institution. When Jesus was not asking people to join an institution, there was no invitation to the church. Walk down the aisle. That wasn't how it went, right? And so I would like to redirect us back to what model of faithfulness or discipleship exists in the Bible, in the biblical text. Yeah. It was really about learning to live differently, because I think a lot of the hang up is, but I got to be a member of this church. This is my church, what I'm going to do. And I actually think that sometimes a necessary separation from the institution to get back to yourself is helpful. Now, if people are experiencing their only social network in the church, and I'm going to feel completely unsupported, I can't walk away, then I understand that you can't sever all the tie, your mama and them there, whatever. But I really think that I want to affirm that God indeed speaks to us as individuals. I think that God is speaking to the institutions, yes. And God speaks to us as individuals. And so sometimes we need to tune out the white noise of the institution in order to hear God's voice more clearly.
Just to be fearless, just to be who you are, and first be honest with yourself, get to know self, and I would say to cut out, the middle things. If you're unsure, if you don't really know, go straight to the source. It's I and I. You don't need anything in the middle telling you how to do it or what not to do or what not to say or what to ask. You already know. You feel it, you have it, but you're just afraid to face your own truth, And once you kind of dig down and kind of get that, just go straight to the source, and trust me, you will get exactly what it is that you need, no matter how hard or scary it may be. It's always your answers if you're willing to listen to them when they come to you.
I would say find those who are good to you. Find places, find your circle of love, or that's what I call. Find people that love you. Find communities that love you. Find places that support and affirm who you are. I don't think it's enough just to be open. I think it is important to be affirming for me. I think on my journey that I don't need people just to be open. I have enough people in my life that are just open. I think it's important in your circle of love that you have people that have your back, that believe that your sexuality is a blessing from God. and that see you equal, that could love you, whether it's a job promotion or whether you're getting married to someone that's same gender. I think it's important that you find people that can be on that journey with you and love you for who you are, all of who you are.
I think nothing holds you back but you. And so my hope is that people, persons who are same gender loving, get to a place where they develop their own confidence and realize that there is nothing that holds you back from you being who you are, receiving opportunities and benefits. Now is a wonderful time to be who you are. My sadness is we keep thinking that there's some great oppression against being same gender loving, when actually, hell, everybody trying to come out the closet now because it's kind of in style. It's a fad. I turn on my television now and television shows are trying to write in that one gay character, right, to reach these audiences. And so I continue to struggle with these conversations around, oh, it's just so hard and woe is me. I think that now is a wonderful time for people to live lives where they are authentic and genuine. When you live your life being authentically you and genuinely you, I think people will celebrate you and affirm you. I think when you are living a life that's not authentically you and genuinely you, then you're not affirmed or celebrated. But when you start living out the essence of who you are in all of your being, in the totality of all of who you are, then celebration will come. Not isms, celebrations will come.
To black churches, there are so many lesbians out there. Just stop hating, stop judging, stop casting bad upon them. Everybody needs God in their lives, no matter if you're a femme, a stud. And let's be 100, you don't know if we're gay unless we present it within our clothing or how we carry ourselves. Who are you to judge? You've cast so many people out already. You have made atheists out of so many people. Just let it go. You are the reason why people hate religion. Let it go, because God will judge you. And while we're in hell, like you said, you'll be right next to us.
What do you want to really say to the black churches?
Honestly, fuck y'all. But no, for real though, like, fuck y'all. We don't care what y'all think. Like, we don't care what y'all think. We're gonna be us. We like women. If they bi, they like women, they like men. You know, to each his own. Like, y'all just mad because y'all can't do what we do. Y'all wanna be us. And I mean, fuck y'all. Like, you know, that's pretty much it. Like, just fuck them. I don't really care. Like,
so you ain't got no advice to the black church, like, this is how y'all need to handle it?
Fuck them. They ain't gonna fucking listen anyways. They gonna still preach that white man's Bible. They're not gonna listen. You know what? Okay, let me try to be helpful. You know, I feel like y'all should really pull the stick out of your ass and really get to know the members of your congregation and understand that one book does not describe everybody. It cannot fit millions of fucking people. You can't tell me that the color pink is everybody's favorite color. You just can't. So I just feel like instead of trying to gain something from church for your own selfish being, like really try to help the members of your congregation, because it's like people out here that like really have problems with like being gay, and they think it's, you know, it's a sin, and they think it's bad, and you know, they want to die and they don't want to do it no more. And by you preaching this stupid shit that you're preaching, you killing somebody slowly. You don't know it, but you killing somebody slowly, and it may not be physically, but you may be killing them mentally. Like you can mentally break somebody down. And I just feel like y'all just open up y'all eyes, open up your ears, open up your heart, your soul, and like y'all claim to be so welcoming, really be welcoming. You know what I mean? Like don't turn anybody away. And I don't know, just do better. Just do better. Just do better, yeah.
What I would say to the black church in regards to lesbians, gays, is operate out of love.
Yeah.
That's it. It's that simple. Operate out of love. Don't look at, you know, people like, oh, that's a, you know, that's a lesbian. That's a human being.
Yeah.
That's somebody's daughter. That's somebody's mother. You know, that's somebody's sister. That's somebody's cousin. You know, how would you treat just your cousin or your mother or your sister, you know, or your aunt or your brother? Just operate out of love. We're not looking for any special treatment, you know. Just operate out of love. That's it.
Yeah. And I mean, we're just the same. Our daily operations, from when we wake up to when we go to bed, everything is the exact same as any other, you know, human being, as any other person. Yeah, like she said, operate out of love, you know, no judging, no shunning, you know, don't operate with fear mechanisms and things like that, you know. Give everybody a chance. You never know who people are, you know, once you get past that shell or that wall that you put up for them. You never know who you're missing out on.
As a Christian, you be Christ. How did Christ treat people? You know, you be Christ. As a Christian, you call yourself a Christian as somebody who believes that, you know, believes in Jesus Christ. You know, put that on, operate in that, and loving people.
It's a wrap.
That was so dope.